Hey, thanks, Kyle. That's right. I've got really excited. This is our second time having this group on, and I am with, I guess I should introduce myself. I'm the digital innovation leader for Zone 1 and help out quite a bit with the STCs, and that is who I've brought on the show today. We have Stephen at Auburndale Elementary, Hannah Hune at Schaffner Elementary, and potentially Jason Hiley. He's at Fairdale, and Jason had some stuff come up at the last minute. So I may be channeling my inner Jason Hiley at the end of this presentation, but we will see. But let me see before I go too much further, and I'll share my screen. Oh my goodness, hold on. It's like amateur hour. You would think after doing this so long, I'd have this down. So our premise for this was I invited these folks on, Hannah and Stephen and Jason, because they are in a unique position for JCPS in that they are both library media specialists and they also serve as the STCs for their school. So I wanted to see how that was playing out in the world of NTI. And when we started talking about this session, I kind of gave them two guiding questions, which you can see here. How have you been supporting your students and staff during NTI? And what are you thinking about for the future based on what you've learned during NTI? So with that, I am going to turn it over to Stephen, and we'll get started.
Hello, I'm Stephen Beck. I'm the librarian at STC and STC at Auburndale Elementary. You can follow me on Twitter at Auburndale LMC. Just a little information about me. This is my 16th year in education. I taught for 9 years at a middle school in another district, and this is my 7th year here in JCPS, as well as my 7th year as a librarian, and this is my first year as STC. Just a snapshot of Auburndale. We have approximately 600 students ranging from pre-K to 5th grade. Over the past couple of years, we have worked to get smart interactive panels into all of the classrooms. And prior to going into NTI, grades 2 through 5 were one-to-one with Chromebooks. Right before we had left, kindergarten and first grade had a limited number of iPads that they were using in their classrooms. But I think beginning next school year that we should be pretty close to one-to-one with iPads in those two grade levels.
That's fantastic, Stephen. I bet they're excited about that.
The administration and I have been working really hard in getting all of our kids to one-to-one. We do currently still have a computer lab with 30 desktop computers, but we are working on plans to evolve that into more of a STEAM lab. And in the library currently, we still do have 7 desktop computers. We have 6 Chromebooks and 3 iPads. And that's another focus that I have been taking. I want to get more devices and a diverse variety of devices for student use in the library.
Yeah, that's one of our big pushes. I think you and I have talked about it, is digital agility. So having kids being able and having access to those multiple devices and them being fluent on any platform is a major goal of our team.
Yes, that's one of my primary goals too in the library. In my role as STC, at the beginning of NTI, I established a designated Google Classroom for teachers and staff to go to kind of serve as a hub of information where the teachers and staff could learn how to use different technologies, and also where I could pass along information from the digital learning channel and other JCPS sources, as well as just providing any type of support that they felt they were needing. I also provided guidance via telephone to school personnel and to a lot of the student families. I posted tech tips and directions to all grade level Google Classrooms so the students and the teachers could see some tech tools that they could use and also get some practice in using those tools. I created screencasts to assist teachers, staff, and students in how to utilize those tech tools, and then also answered any questions that they may have and provided any assistance that they may need. Um, in my role also, I've been assisting with the backpack showcases and backpack defenses. I've helped a lot of fifth graders with linking their artifacts and um, preparing their defenses for the backpack team to review. And I've also produced a variety of individual screencasts for families that when I was speaking with them via telephone, if I found that it would be easier for them to have a screencast or to have some type of direction where they could see how to access a particular resource or how to get onto Google Classroom, then I went ahead and created some screencasts for them.
Stephen, how did the backpack defenses go in general?
They have gone pretty well. We did have to kind of change our mindset at the beginning and make some alterations since we were going from in-person defenses to the students now either recording a defense or sending their backpack defense slides or their showcase and providing feedback via comments instead of having, in a lot of cases, instead of having that live interaction. But overall, I think defenses, I'm very proud of our fifth graders and the great job that they've done on their defenses.
Excellent. Good to hear. Let me move on for you. There you go.
Okay. In my role as librarian, I have been regularly updating the LibGuide. I cannot say enough about the district's support with having all the librarians, giving all of them access to the LibGuide and to the great support that LMS gives us. As part of updating the LibGuide, at the very beginning, I added the NTI plan link to our LibGuide as just another place where families could go to find NTI information and to find their teachers' information and how to get into their classrooms. I also produced screencasts showing the students and the faculty how to access library resources and how to get the necessary passwords and to show them just everything that is available to reemphasize that. I try to all the time communicate that to our entire school, but I thought the screencast would be another avenue for me to promote the library and all the great resources that we have. During NTI, I've also had the opportunity to share fun experiences such as the Everywhere Book Fest that I just happened to come up on Twitter. It was a great event where authors were able to do book talks about some upcoming books, and the kids really seemed to respond positively to it. There was one session that there were three authors that got together and kind of did a tour of their country and showed the kids how to cook a native cuisine and talked about their books while they were cooking. I really enjoyed being able to view that myself, and I know from the comments that the students left that they really enjoyed it as well.
That's great. So was it like a Zoom type meeting where the kids joined in? Is that how they got on?
Well, it was via Facebook Live.
Okay.
So the students could click on different sessions and then they could post comments and in the chat, and those authors would then answer some of those questions while they were presenting their book talk.
Gotcha.
This year, we've also continued our participation in the Kentucky Bluegrass Awards. I posted a place where the students could vote on the LibGuide, and we've been participating since I've been in the library at Auburndale, and I wanted to continue that even though we weren't meeting face to face anymore. I still wanted to promote that to the kids and let them have an opportunity to voice their opinion about which book was their favorite, and I had quite a bit of participation still. I was very pleased with that. Also, in order to promote the library and let the kids know that the library was still here for them and that I, as their librarian, was still here, I posted various read alouds and curated some ebook collections to encourage the kids to explore more books and to encourage them to continue to read for pleasure during this time. I visited various Google classrooms to encourage the kids to read and also to promote the library resources and remind them of all the great things that they could access via our library LibGuide. I have been collaborating with teachers as well and trying to get resources to them as needed and bring their attention to resources that may enrich their instruction. And I continue to seek out resources and experiences to share with the students and with the kids. Recently, I even was able to run across some more collections of free ebooks that various book companies were providing, and I have posted that just a few days ago to the LibGuide. So I'm still looking for all kinds of opportunities for the kids to have access to books.
Yeah, that is great. And it reminds me of last week when we were on, and while we were having some technical difficulties, we all got into a big conversation about ebooks and funding and having to choose between print and ebooks that maybe we can come back around to here in a few minutes.
Yes, the book companies have really done a great job of providing free access to a number of resources. I have been very pleased with how much support all the vendors and all the various book companies have provided in providing the kids and the teachers with all kinds of materials and just a wide variety of books. And our future plans, as I stated earlier, we are working to get kindergarten and first grade to one-to-one with iPads. During NTI, I've gotten more inspiration to use the flipped learning in the library when we return to in-class meetings or in-person meetings. I had used that somewhat in the library before, but I'm wanting to use that even more now that I've seen how well the students can engage with flipped learning. We're going to continue use of the G Suite and other tech tools in our library, and I'm hoping that I can have more collaborative opportunities with our teachers and carry over projects from the library into the classroom or vice versa, bring more projects that they are creating in their classroom into the library, where it will be even more collaborative than what we are currently doing. And then also in our library, I want to promote more STEAM activities. We do Makerspace every Friday in the library, and I'm hoping to integrate more tech tools into that time as well.
That sounds really good. Stephen, I think there's all kinds of opportunities there that we've all grown quite a bit over this time working from home and dealing with NTI. So again, really appreciate you being here and sharing your experiences and what you've learned and what you're hoping for today. So
thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So I think up next is, it's Hannah. Hannah, you're the librarian and STC at Schaffner.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Yes, like I said, I am the librarian and the STC at Schaffner. And I put up here where you could follow me on Twitter. That's at Hannah_Hannah. Oh, sorry, Hune_Hannah. So a little bit about me. I am new to my STC role. We'll go to that next slide. I think it says a little bit more about how long I've been. No, you're fine.
I'm texting, emailing Jason at the same time. He's having internet or trouble getting on the call. So
no, you're fine.
If I zone out, just say, next slide, please.
You're fine. I'll be right on that. So I've actually been teaching for a total of 9 years. I was in the classroom first. So I taught for a few years in third grade. And then I've been doing 5 years now as a librarian. And then I moved mid-year over to Schaffner and then took over the role as an STC as well. So I've been doing that for a while. So some of our stats here at Schaffner, we have somewhere between 550 to 600 kids. And for our technology in the library, we've got 10 Chromebooks and 5 iPads. And then we have some of the iPods as well. And we have one iPad cart that is shared between the kindergarten and first grade classrooms, which is about 7 altogether. They share one iPad cart. We have one Chromebook cart that the 5th grade just got, which arrived in February. And that one, I believe, is going to float around next year too, or may end up going in the library. That was kind of up in the air. We also have a Chromebook cart that is for school-wide checkout, so each group could get about 6 at a time. And we also have one school-wide open Chromebook lab. And so each class has a mixture of anywhere from 2 to 10 desktops, Chromebooks, and or iPads. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Some of them even have Kindles as well. So it's just, who knows how old things are, what they have, how well it works. And it's just kind of a mixture of what all is going on there. So we're very low as far as nowhere near 1-to-1. And I put in my little blurb there, that's less than half the school having some kind of device at any time.
Yeah,
so things difficult.
It's one of the main reasons that I like pulling you and Jason and Stephen together, is because of the wide variety of access that you all have. And I know that you all as a school are working on trying to bump up those numbers. And I know the district leadership and JCPS is really making that a priority. You know, they sent out 20,000 Chromebooks to kids during NTI, I think. And I know I forgot to pull this up on my phone, but there's basically a program that they've started where some of the community partners can donate money to JCPS. It's on JCPS's main page, but that fund has already got something like $37,000 in it, and it's earmarked to go to more devices for kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge need. It's a big thing for us. So, It's always something that we're thinking about. So when it came time for us to go into NTI, there was definitely a struggle because we have so few devices. Our kids were not as prepared to go into NTI. These are kids that don't regularly get on Chromebooks, so they do not know how to log on to their devices. They have to log on as guests most of the time. So we had to make sure that they had log on, some kind of Google form that we sent out, copied and printed so that they were able and ready to make sure that they knew how to log into their information and get onto Classroom. And the parents were ready for that as well. I created several screencastify videos on how to access logins for teachers so that they could do that and provide that information for parents, for the teachers to give that out to students as well. And I made a Google site for our school because we didn't have one at the time, so that there was all that NTI information was in one place for easy access for classrooms and other JCPS resources. And then lots of tutorial videos on how to access anything that they needed on the JCPS site, but also for students to just get on to anything that they needed. So I've kind of been on call as far as that goes for parents and for teachers, just for anything that they needed to do. That's been my main role as STC. A lot of it was on the front end. That's kind of my main thing that I've been saying is my STC role was mostly in the beginning, before school even got out. A lot of it was right from the get-go, trying to do things. And then I got to pick up from the library position after that because I had a lot of lessons to get ready. So we did kind of a mixture there. So, and then after that, handling it from the library part. The next slide with the library position, I feel like more of my role there was making sure, like, sort of like what Stephen said, that the kids had access to the LibGuide, that I was constantly updating it and making sure that there was always that they had access to all of the resources that LMS has given to us. They have been incredible, constantly putting up every free ebook site that all the publishers have put out, everything that has been free that we have had that people saw floating around. LMS was on top of it and created NTI sites for us. So my job was mostly to make sure parents and students knew how to get to it. So that's been a big part, and to make sure that they had a way to have a way to get to it for lessons. So I would make sure that I made lessons that gave them a reason to go to it so that they weren't just ignoring it. So I created lessons that made it to where it was intentional so that they had to go to it, and then they would maybe be interested in seeing the books. So I had virtual field trips that made them go on there and made sure that they were going into our LibGuide, using it so that it just didn't sit there, because we would have been using it a lot if we had been in school. So I wanted to make sure that they were going on and doing things with it. I liked so many of those authors that were doing all those virtual read alouds, like the lunch doodles with Mo Willems, and Oliver Jeffers was doing really incredible things, and a lot of authors were doing things. So I gave kids opportunities to do that. I kept myself doing read alouds on YouTube lots of times, so I made sure that I kept kids up to date with that stuff too. So those were my big roles there. And then as far as looking into the future, I think my biggest thing now that we had been talking a lot about what was going to happen with the library schedule for next year. And now that I had such a big role as the STC and the librarian, it's kind of pushed us into having a fully flexible schedule for next year. So that's a really exciting thing. Any librarian knows being able to have a fully flexible schedule is a big deal. It means that I get to have way more collaboration with teachers. They will come into my library and co-teach with me. I will have opportunities to do STEAM activities after doing reading. I will have more opportunities to do things with technology and get to collaborate more with you guys at the tech team and stuff. I think this is great. I get all kinds of opportunities to do that. I can really talk to them more about what we have to offer on both sides as library and as STC, because I was a lot more boxed in with what times I had classes, but if I am open, I can do it kind of anytime I want. So it's going to be a lot more of a cool experience, I think, and really showing them what I have to offer. So I think that's really awesome. And, we have a lot more we can do with different things with we talked about possibly trying to see about getting a grade level Google certified, even though they can't technically. We want to do something like that. We see the need for our kids to know what they're doing, and that's going to be a big push. So
yeah, that's awesome. I think Jason was able to join us. Jason, are you there? Thanks, Hannah. That's a lot of that flexibility is going to be key. I'm super excited for at least for everything that you get to do, but especially being able to collaborate more with you directly. So,
I'm really excited.
I'm
Jason,
here. Can you
hey,
hear me?
Jason, I can hear you. So
Okay, good. Had
what
some
I've
trouble getting
learned
on.
what I've learned about this is that apparently three of you is too many. Since we are almost out of time again, we've got a couple minutes left. I know you were having some technical issues. Do you want me to go to a particular slide to highlight like your lessons learned, or to go
Sure,
over
we can go to the starting NTS slide that shows the website.
this
I
one?
was going to talk about the website. We created
Yeah.
a school website or updated it to get the teachers ready. All those links, we made Google Sites because they're a little bit easier to update quickly. So that's one thing I've worked on. And then we can jump down to
Jason, are all those teachers editing their own site now?
most of them, yes.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, some of them are team sites, so they at least have one teacher on the team that will be in charge of it. Yes. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's we've embraced Google. That's for sure at our school, definitely.
What else, Jason? What else do you want to
You
show?
can jump down to the virtual library because I was going to talk about the Google Classroom. We did choice boards. I've posted weekly story times where I wanted it to be like what the kids would get in the library at school. So we do weekly story times. I've done some robotics. We've done STEM challenges at home. I've had kids send me pictures. Um, and then my last slide talks about some of the things that we used anyway in school that I found out could be integrated with Google Classroom. So I was able to assign like Tinker coding lessons right into Google Classroom. Um, and I guess I could stop there for about that time.
Well, we are. I just
Okay.
wanted, is that all of them? Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate all three of you. And I feel like I apologize to one of you every time we do this. And this time it's your turn, Jason. But
Well,
we
I
just,
went first last time, so it's fair.
that is true. So not as bad as I with Stephen last week, where he didn't even get to say anything.
Right.
But thank you for sharing your insights. These are great examples of what other LMSs and STCs can do and help with the teachers and students. So we appreciate you all being on.
Thank you.
Happy Friday. Thanks everybody for being here on Friday afternoon before a holiday. So Lacey and I are here to share with you some information about our JCPS academic reentry plan. I always feel a little unprepared when I'm presenting with Lacey because she has on those beautiful muffs and her microphone and looks so professional, and I'm just sitting here without my microphone and my earmuffs. So, but I'm just going to start us off, and then I'm going to hop on over to the digital learning channel so that I can monitor the chat. So, Lacey, if you want to share your screen, I'll just do a brief introduction, and then we can get started.
Does everybody see my screen? It should be shared. It's not my first rodeo.
Okay, so the purpose of our JCPS reentry plan is basically really simple. It's to ensure that students come back around academic reentry, and we know as a team, as a JCPS team, that we know how to best provide support for that successful reentry. Really, the purpose of this presentation, though, today is Module 1, and that is really to share the process KDE has provided to support for a successful reentry back into school. We've actually taken that guidance and married that with our deeper learning vision for JCPS. And really, we have our own twist on the reentry. So we're just going to outline what the district support will look like and how it will be provided during reentry planning. This process really takes into account a significant portion of, our spring was spent in NTI. So principals should consider using this guidance. We had an AIC meeting today, and some of the AICs talked about how they've already begun this work in their schools, and, they have their own forms and their own documents. And we were like, great. I mean, that's awesome. And we're not surprised because we know that at the end of every school year, we are always reflecting on the year. And then how do we look at our curriculum and design as we move forward? So keeping that in mind, we all, all of this work is really centering on teacher reflection. What learning and opportunities have students had? What missed learning opportunities have they not had? So this is really an opportunity for vertical and horizontal collaboration. Really in the beginning, it's more about teacher reflection, and then it really moves from teacher reflection into PLCs, and then really in the end, building that instructional frame that's a learner-centered model on how to best meet students' needs in their opportunities of learning loss. So I am going to turn it over to my great friend and colleague, Lacey Eccles, and I'm going to hop over to the chat.
All right. Hello, everybody. So we know this is going to be a very unique beginning of a school year with new norms, new challenges, and we're here to help. So welcome. As we start to walk through the JCPS plan, if you have any questions, please place them in the chat box. A lot of my amazing colleagues will be there to help get those answered. So let's look at this graphic. The purpose of today's module 1, is to, just like Susan said, provide you with an overview of the guidance that we've had from KDE about academic reentry and the adaptations that we've made so that it fits in line with JCPS's mission and vision and how JCPS kind of plans to respond. So you'll see by the big orange arrow that we are in module 1, which is just a general overview. And that module, this module, is the first in 3 modules. So you'll see the kind of, I guess we'll call it a sagey green circle for module 2. And that's planning for reentry. And we actually started that module today with AICs. And there'll be opportunities that we'll talk about in a couple slides. And then we have module 3, which is responding to reentry. So that's once we are getting in school and how we're going to respond to that reentry. And then we have kind of the continual support through JCPS and how we'll support teachers, AICs, leaders, as we kind of move throughout the upcoming unique school year. So if we take that graphic from the previous slide and we stretch it out into a long line to make us a timeline of professional learning, you'll see that today, again, big orange arrow, we are living in Module 1. And this is the last of the Module 1 professional learning on the Digital Learning Channel. Although, like was said earlier, these are being videoed, they'll be snipped and linked. So if one of your colleagues wasn't able to be here today or in the previous days, that will be on demand and you can use the power of pause. Then we have Module 2, which occurred at the AIC meeting today. And then we have scheduled times for zones to also experience Module 2. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in slides 8, 9, and 10. And then we have PLC and network support. So CDLI, school-based PLC office hours will be scheduled. And then we move in towards the end of the summer to another Digital Learning Channel series, which is Module 3, which will be scheduled the weeks of July 22nd and the weeks of August 3rd. And then once we're in school, there'll be continual PLC and network support with the teaching and learning teams. So let's talk a little bit about options for leading that work. We encourage you and your school to begin thinking and engaging in this work together. Schools are going to need to start to consider who in their building is best equipped to lead that work. And it's probably not going to be just one person. And so today we met with AICs to equip them with some of the tools they might need in order to lead this work. However, there are also several leaders within your building. You might feel that APs are best equipped to help lead this work, teacher leaders, ILTs, department chairs. But there needs to be some conversations around who is going to help us lead this work. Although this is the work of everybody, you do need to have some folks that are willing to step up and make the plans and help lead PLCs through the processes that we're going to talk about. So academic reentry, we want to start thinking about how we can set up students to transition back in the fall in a way that's going to support their academic success. And JCPS and KDE see this work kind of coming across in 2 stages. And so Module 2, so we are in Module 1, and so the other 2 stages we see it happening is in Module 2 and Module 3. So Module 2 is going to should occur before the start of the 2021 school year. And we'll talk a little bit in more detail about this stage in the next slide. But this is the stage where we're going to assess the learning gaps that exist and adjust our curriculum accordingly. Module 2 deals with teacher reflection on what learning experiences and opportunities they've provided, and then based on some collaboration, how they can offer some equity of access with more personalized entry points when we return. And then we have Module 3. Once teachers have a high-level overview of the adjusted curriculum in place that they did in Module 2, Module 3 is the day-to-day, week-to-week formative assessments that will help inform those instructional decisions as you move throughout the school year. So we need to begin to think about how can we spiral in, scaffold up, and personalize students' learning. We're starting to shift our mindset from the idea of remediation and coverage to a more holistic learning progressions and experiences that spiral in those competencies. Module 3 training, like I said earlier, will begin to occur late in the summer. So let's talk a little bit more detail about Module 2, what we did with AICs and what will be offered to teachers per zone. So for Module 2, we see this occurring in 3 steps or 3 actions. We have Action 1. Action 1 is some individual reflection on what was it that students were able to learn during NTI and what were we not able to dig deeply in during NTI. So they're going to identify potential time in the 2021 school year where we could tighten up. Every year we do these great things with our curriculum and have flexibility to really add in the pieces that we love. However, we need to start thinking about the unique situation we're in this upcoming school year and where we are going to fit those pieces and parts that students weren't able to engage in that previous year. So once grade level teams have identified potential time, they need to think about those potential learning gaps that their students currently have. And were there standards you didn't have the opportunity to engage in? Were there standards that students didn't have the opportunity to explore in the 1920 school year? Perhaps you use choice boards. Some students may have built up their skills through that platform. For example, we know that every choice board has a standard aligned to it. So if students were choosing activities from the choice boards that were more project-based, learner-centered, then we know that they were engaging in learning standards. So essentially, action 1 is, where can we save time? Where are those potential learning gaps? And what are the essential standards that we need to teach? The better job that teams do in action 1, the smoother actions 2 and 3 will go. So then we have action 2, where we start analyzing the information from action 1 and have vertical conversations with the level above and the level below. So in action 1, I've met with our PLC. We've talked about, I've reflected individually. I've met with my PLC, and we've kind of talked about, where are there some potential learning gaps? Well, I need to share that information with grade levels above and grade levels below. So for example, if I'm a 3rd grade teacher, that's the grade my daughter's in, I'll meet with a 2nd grade team, and they will share with me where they think students in next year with some potential learning gaps. So they will share with me their action 1 and their action pieces of their action 2. Then I'll meet with the 4th grade team to share what our PLC thought there might be learning gaps in 3rd grade. So those vertical conversations are critical and important to make sure that students have the opportunities that they might not have been able to have because of the unique scenario that we were in. And then finally, we have action 3, where grade level teams come back together and draft an adjustive curriculum using all the work from actions 1 and actions 2 for the 2021 school year. So again, this is the time where that PLC starts to think about, all right, how can we spiral in or scaffold up and personalize that learning? So this is an opportunity for teachers to begin thinking about different access points for students as they engage in the 2021 school year. I know this seems like a lot, and Module 2 training is much more detailed with templates and examples and different coaching conversations and coaching support that can exist as teachers and your staff work through these 3 actions. So previously I can't remember what slide it was, but one of the previous slides, we talked about how there are additional learning opportunities for teachers and teacher leaders in your building to engage in the Module 2, which is what, again, AIC is engaged in this morning. And so the next 3 slides are those dates. And again, this slideshow is linked to the Digital Learning Channel's agenda. And so all of these are live links. And so this is elementary training dates and times. And you'll notice that there are 2 per zone. Those are a repeat of the same training. So I would encourage your leaders in your building, they don't only have to attend one or the other. These are the middle school dates, training dates, and times. I can speak as the science lead for JCPS that I had department chair meetings this week and have shared this information with department chairs to encourage them to attend these professional learning experiences, as I believe they are ripe to lead some of the work in the science department in their buildings. And I know the other content areas have done the same. And these are high school training dates and times. All of these will also be on PD Central. And again, these are live links to the actual Zooms, just to make that a little simpler, as well as just don't forget that these are repeat trainings. And then we have Module 3. And Module 3 is once you've done this amazing job with your PLCs in Module 2. This is where teachers will use pre-assessments and formative assessments to inform their instructional decisions. And much more detail will be released in late July and or early August around Module 3. So that was a lot of information. What now? So what is the snapshot of beyond the module? So we've done Module 2, we've done Module 3. So during the 2020 school year, there'll be continual professional learning and support for AICs, for PLCs, content specific, to help teachers navigate these new waters that we're all haven't experienced before. And so there are some action items and some next steps that folks need to start thinking about. A school needs to identify who's going to help lead that work of academic reentry for their school. Building principals need to be thinking about setting up expectations and protecting time. Instructional coaches and teacher leaders need to be thinking about how can they coach through and facilitate this work. And so which school personnel should be involved in that planning of academic reentry? And then time. Identifying time available during the upcoming school year or during the summer for teachers to engage in that grade level analysis, i.e. step action 1 of module 2, and that vertical analysis, action 2 of module 2, and then scaffolding up and scaffolding down opportunities for personalized learning, that action 3 in module 2. So that is really kind of the big picture of what this process looking like. And like Susan said earlier, many schools have already begun to think about this process and have some of their own templates and some of their own ideas already established. And that's amazing and that's great. And this isn't meant to be in addition to, this is just meant to be another tool and another way to begin thinking about that re-entry. Right down here is a link to the entire CDLI team so that it's an easy way to get a hold of us if you need any additional support as you work through this exciting new adventure that we all have ahead of us. All right, so what questions do you possibly have that I can help answer? I like hay. Well, hay back. It's a lot of information, and I know I talked fast, but it's just that's the general overview. The meat of the work really happens in Module 2, so I encourage folks to take the opportunity to attend one of those professional learning experiences to really think through what that might look like in their specific content area. Well, you know, all shucks. Thanks. It's been a joy. I know you like these. These are very fancy. Do I? Well, these are my daughter's like 9-year-old gaming headphones for when she plays, you know, Mario Kart. But great. I'm thrilled. I sound fantastic. Yeah. Season means there's typically more than one. I know, I know. We really appreciate your department setting up this fantastic venue for us to be able to offer such professional learning experiences.
For when she
Yeah. Yeah, it's rather visionary, and I think teachers that I've spoken to have really been pleased with the platform that you guys have provided.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I'm back for just a second. I saw a couple questions on the chat that I kind of wanted to address. One was they'd seen science on PD Central and asked if the others would be on. Yes, all the sessions will be on. And once school ends, if teachers attend those sessions, those will be offered for professional development credit for next year. So I just wanted to ensure everybody, you know, had that information. And, you know, as Lacey said, it's real important to identify the teacher leaders and the leaders in your school who are really going to engage in this important work. So thanks, Lacey. You did an awesome job as always. Jenny's done a great job facilitating this week. And again, we appreciate the partnership with our IT3 friends. Looks like we've had amazing views during NTI. So Thanks to everyone, and enjoy your long weekend.
Yeah, everybody enjoy. Hopefully it's pretty.
For having trouble hearing me, which may have been a blessing in disguise, but hopefully that's been cleared up now, and we can keep on trucking. Well, I will take you guys now. If you're joining us, if you're still in the chat, thank you guys. Mine hadn't loaded, so thank you very much, Susan, for hopping in and letting us know that. Mine was still showing hey from the very beginning. I'll take you through the JCPS NTI page one more time here, so you can check out what's coming for the rest of the afternoon. And also we'll look at some of the menu offerings from previous sessions that you may want to check out that will be available on demand. So if you head to jcps.me/NTI, and then you head to the teacher toolkit, you can see what we've got remaining for this afternoon. Right here, it looks like next we are going to have the UK Next Gen team will join us for describing how to keep from putting that genie back in the bottle. This is a session they've done for us before, and it's very informative because it discusses the pitfalls of this golden opportunity we've been given and making sure that we keep that momentum alive and well into the fall, depending on what that's going to look like. But all of the adoption of EdTech tools and all of the different platforms in which students have been able to operate and express themselves, we really want to keep that going, and so they're going to discuss that with us a bit. You've got the JCPS Summer League announcement from Raymond will be with us for that at 2:30, and then the final show we'll have today will be the preschool development with Donna Early, and Barbara will be joining us there also. But if you look back, you can look back through all of the previous weeks that we've had. So if you either joined us or someone in your building had joined us or on your staff and you want to check that out, you can go back and kind of see when that was. The slide decks are also, if they were provided to us, we included them as well. If it's an on-demand episode, that'll link directly to it. If you have not done so, I would encourage you to join us at jcps.me/digital learning. And that will take you to all of our playlists and all of the different things that are available for you to view and check out. We've got tons of, what we will do is we've chopped these up, as we mentioned before, into 30-minute sessions from the day. So at the end of the day, they all come back together. We've got a few hours worth. We break them up into pieces, and then we upload them on here. So we do still have a bit of a backlog, but we're working feverishly to get those put up for you. But you've got a science playlist, one specific to adminum for STCs. You've got an NTI support playlist, which is pretty much most of what we've had this time. Friskies, things just for principals. If you're a principal checking us out and you want resources from other folks, those are on there for you as well. Study Island. The list just goes on and on. Printing support when we get back into our buildings. Minecraft. Esports, that's another exciting initiative that we have. Spheros. So please, 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 if you haven't, join us at the JCPS Digital Learning channel. And if you're watching us now, hit that subscribe button. And what happens is when you do that, you'll get a notification every time that we either go live, or you can set it up to get one when a new video is posted. So, of course, our subscriptions have grown throughout this, but you want to make sure that you have hit that little button, that bell to subscribe, and that will also help, as Elaine Abernatha has pointed out before, that helps it curate your recommended videos also. So oftentimes we find on our personal accounts, maybe we'll get like, it'll want us to watch a video about cats chasing lasers or something, I don't know. But maybe that's just mine. But this will help pepper in various episodes from the Digital Learning channel and other resources as well into your kind of feed there for YouTube if you're just trying to see what's available. So that's a pretty powerful tool also. Let's see here. So back on the Digital Learning channel, you've got things again for related arts and special area also. ECE, We've got one specific to backpack. Really quite the a la carte offering for anything that you may have interest in, ed tech or otherwise, in the district that's going on. And we run the gamut, anything from highlighting awesome work from students to how-to videos on technical questions to upcoming events. So another great resource you may check out is, let me see if I can find it this way. Here we go, Kentucky Go Digital. So this is another, we'll call it kind of a sister channel. So Kentucky Go Digital was founded by educators for educators here in Kentucky. And I know that our very own Elaine Abernatha and Heather Worrell, along with some of their counterparts in other places in the state, launched this some time ago in an effort to really kind of break down those silos and peek over the fence, so to speak, to see what the neighbors were up to, and if there were ways that we could learn from them or from teacher to teacher. Often it's difficult to see what's going on across the street, much less across the state, if you're kind of in your class all day and you're trying to teach your students. So this was an opportunity to open that up and give you that power of pause as well. Again, similar layout. You've got lots of different playlists and things. The one of the big differences is this is not exclusive to Jefferson County. We do have a lot of folks from Jefferson County who have contributed, but that is not exclusive. Again, this is statewide. So a major resource for you to check out there. This is Kentucky Go Digital as well. So subscribe to that if you haven't as well. And we are, again, expecting next session is going to be the Don't Put the Genie Back in the Bottle by the UK Next Gen team. And it looks like they've got us a YouTube video here, so they may have plans for us to show that on their behalf today, but we'll keep an eye on the video call and see if they join us. Let me head over here to here we are. So usually whenever we have folks join us in the chat, right now we have Sade Graves is watching for us. And I think I also saw some of my other teammates in there before as well. We like to try to keep this chat going. So as we have guests that join us, if you've got questions or anything that you'd like to add, please do that here for us. I lost our video feed for a moment. I'm hoping I'm back up and ready to rock now. All right. So it's just about 2 o'clock on the button. So I will head on over to the UK Next Gen, Put the Genie Back in the Bottle episode, and we'll check that out here together.
Good afternoon, JCPS. Welcome and thank you for joining us for a special episode with our partners from UK Next Gen. We will have joining us Lou Young, who is the Executive Director, Justin Bathen, who is Director of Next Gen Scholars, and Karen Perry, who is our Director of Digital Learning and Network Partnerships. A little bit about UK Next Gen. Of course, their work is to help school and district leaders implement deeper and more personalized learning with an eye toward equity for all learners. In the last few months, UK Next Gen has been working with educators to reflect on what they've learned during the crisis and how this learning can help us move closer to transformation in the future. And I've heard so many principals yesterday and today talking about how school is going to look different in JCPS when we get back, which I think is so exciting. So their session today, Don't Put Genie Back in the Bottle, is designed to engage us in an important conversation about learning that is happening across JCPS, Kentucky, and our nation. So I'm going to hand it over to UK Next Gen. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Susan. It's been awesome to work with JCPS. This is the end of our 4th year working directly with JCPS on moving towards next generation learning and leadership practices. And it's been a great journey together. So we're going to have Lou joining us, we hope, in a few minutes, and then also potentially a student from Fayette County who was part of a session that we hosted last week as part of a big national conversation. And so we thought with the 30 minutes that we had with you all today, we would share some of what emerged from that big national conversation as we begin to sort of think about, not putting the genie back in the bottle, as this session is titled. So I'll share slides. Is that okay? I think I can share slides. Does that sound right to you guys?
Yes, Matt? You can. Yep.
While Justin's doing that, I'll just give a little bit more context. Last week, we were in a national conversation called A New Way Forward. That was really a conversation that was about, we're in this period of time now that's just been super disruptive to school generally. And so what are we going to do to figure a new way forward? What is school going to look like? Reflecting on what we're learning right now, but what should school look like when we return, not to regular business as usual, but to a new approach to learning. So the national conversation was what kind of spurred our thinking, and also our thinking and our discussions that we've had with educators all over Kentucky, doing the good work of figuring this out right now on behalf of kids in Kentucky. So the idea, the title of Not Putting Genie Back in the Bottle is really a nod to the idea that this period of disruption in education has let the traditional genie out of the bottle, and we really can't go back to what it has been. So one of the questions that we really want to be thinking about today are what are the elements of learning that shouldn't go back to what it was. And so what are we learning now that informed our thinking about moving forward is really the center point of our discussion today.
So as Karen said, we've been working on this new way forward. A couple of partners we want to give shout outs to are Pam Moran and Ira Sokol. They are educators from the University from Albemarle County in Virginia. And they were working with us on this national presentation that we're beginning to share. Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Heather. I think that's starting to come in. And so this sort of was where we wanted to start the discussion today. And we also want to tee up, we know there's a chat going on for everyone that's listening. What about this? What about learning right now do we not want to put back in the bottle? And so if you all can give comments to that chat, we're going to be keeping an eye on that. I know Susan Price is keeping an eye on that chat and giving some responses. So we sort of want to hear from you too about what's going on as we pull out some things nationally that have been discussed on our front. Oh, hey, Natalia, good to see you. So Natalia, we'll have you set up for just a couple of minutes here. So can you jump forward 2 slides, Heather? Yep, one more. Okay, super. So on this particular slide, we want to show you sort of like what we want to reflect on. Our current objectives around NTI, what's working, what's not working there. We're going to hear from Natalia, who just joined, who's a student in Fayette County, about her experiences, share some of our brainstorming, and begin to consider sort of the takeaways that we take with us into the education system in August and moving forward that we sort of want to preserve coming out of this pandemic. So jump to the next one, and Karen, I'm going to turn to you on that one.
Yep. So our big questions for today are really, what have your kids discovered about learning? What are you discovering about learning? This period of disruption has sort of shaken us out of our sort of status quo, keep on trucking, particularly here in the spring where we would all just be holding on for dear life anyway. But we've been shaken out of our element a little bit. So we want to hear from you and from Natalia, and have a discussion about what are your kids discovering about learning and what are you discovering about learning from this disruption. So if we could go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first place I want to start is really with the student perspective, which is where we should always start, right? So question first to Natalia. Natalia, what are you learning about being a student in this kind of remote environment? What's working for you? What's not working for you? And let me just give actually, before you start, Natalia, a little bit of introduction. Natalia is a senior in Fayette County. She's at a school called the STEAM Academy. And she does a little bit of work with the Next Gen team, but she has a real unique perspective on the learning experience that we wanted to share with you all and just bring in a student voice. So Natalia, what are you learning about being a student in this environment? What's working? What's not working? We'll throw it over to you.
Thank you. I'm learning a lot about myself and about what I learn with BEST, what type of learning styles I learn from BEST. And I think that's what a lot of students and my peers are doing, is that we're learning about how we learn and what's best for us and what in this structure is working and what isn't working. Some students don't work well with online work, and they work better when they can be in class and function with teachers and can see face to face. I'm one of those. But I'm also learning to take responsibility for my time management and just learn to be more adaptable to situations, which is something that all students can really learn from. So this is a nice environment to be pushed into. We're also getting to see a side of teachers that we haven't seen before, because they're more understanding of our circumstances because they're living in them now, and they realize that home life can be a lot more challenging than they realize. And so our excuses become explanations, and we're just overall more connected to our teachers than we had been.
Natalia, you are so tweetable, honestly. What had been viewed as excuses is now viewed as explanations, I think is a very humane approach. And I think you're right. All of our resilience and persistence are being tested right now in this new environment. So really appreciate your perspective.'re going to come back to you and dig into that a little bit more. But before we move on, can you just give us an example of why it's important, or tell us why it's important to understand your teachers a little bit more? You mentioned this giving you an opportunity to view your teachers in a slightly different light, but why is that important to you?
It's very important to me because you have to realize how much teachers are adjusting just as we are, and that it makes them seem more human rather than just the people who are supposed to give us what we're supposed to learn, rather than there's people who are also working in a system that they may be struggling with too. It just gives everyone a more humane look to everything and more understandable of everyone else's circumstances. So there's not as many students pushing and pulling at teachers, and we're more patient with them if we have a problem and they take a minute to get back to us, because they're taking emails from everyone, solving everyone's problems right now.
Super interesting. And I would just say, I think I can speak on behalf of teachers everywhere and say that we appreciate you all being patient with us as we figure things out too. It really just, this compassion has to go both ways as we're all figuring out this whole scene. Super interesting. Okay, we're definitely going to come back to you. But the next question I want to ask was originally going to be for Lou, but she's having trouble joining us. I think she might be in the chat. But Justin, can I throw this question over to you while we're waiting for Lou to get in, or respond to the chat? Based on your observations with across Kentucky and the country, what are you learning about learning spaces and workspaces and equity?
So clearly we have a lot of inequity. As home has become place-based learning, that's really a new place for learning. The reliance that we have on everyone's homes as places of learning really bring out, like, what does home mean to you? And we are seeing some inequities there. There are just a lot of questions about space in our world right now. The thought of going back to classrooms with 30 students in a room together in terms of space is another really interesting question about how we've designed spaces in schools over time. Clearly, the spaces we've designed in schools are not sort of well designed to keep viruses at a minimum. So there's just a lot of space questions, a lot of equity sort of embedded in those space questions. And obviously I'm going to speak to technology in just a minute. Even in those spaces, what's the availability of access to communication tools in those spaces? So a lot we're learning there. The flip side, the positives are home is clearly proving a space for some degree of learning for some kids. And while we have not mastered the equity questions inside of that, home as place-based learning, I think, has a new future that we didn't know it had coming out of this pandemic. I'll give you for instance, the Pritchard Committee right now, a statewide organization educationally here in Kentucky, has shifted a bunch of its parent outreach from sort of trying to do the parent as leaders, serve on SBDM council kind of work, to parents as leaders of learning. And that's a new place for us to be, and potentially a good place for us to explore more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just so much for us to learn about how to really reach out to kids in these sort of new learning circumstances. That really leads us to the next slide, which is what have you seen that worries you or gives you hope about kids who are having a hard time reaching? And I'll take that one. It's always been the case that even kids who are present in our classrooms, sometimes we have a hard time connecting with those kids. I think what I've seen here across Kentucky and across the country is sort of a redoubling at the effort to try to reach students that are sometimes hard to reach. On the positive, I've seen kids who have the kind of freedom that Natalia mentioned really grow in this kind of environment. We're hearing about kids who appreciate being able to make their own schedules and set their own time. And so they're able to respond to the academic challenges in front of them a little bit more at their own pace and in their own way. So that's really hopeful to me. What's worrisome to me are the kids that we either can't reach at all because of technology or because of they're just not engaging, or maybe they're struggling with health situations or dire financial circumstances in their home. And that really worries me a lot. And I think it makes it clear to me that when we do return to school in some kind of mix of face-to-face or a new school year, we need to make sure we're building up the infrastructure, not only for social emotional learning, but actually outreach to all kids across our districts and across our state of Kentucky. I think sometimes we take a little bit for granted that kids are sitting in seats and they're going to show up. If not today, if we don't reach them today, then we'll reach them tomorrow. But I don't know that we should keep making that assumption. So that worries me a little bit. And of course, back to Justin's point about equity, I'm worried a little bit about a lot actually about kids who don't have access to technology and the infrastructure, the Wi-Fi and all of the access that they need to keep learning if we do keep moving back and forth from face-to-face to remote learning. So that's a little
shout outs to chat. I've been watching the chat a little bit and want to get some chat. First, Natalia, of course, is getting lots of love in chat. Natalia, as always, is a star. And always. So thanks for joining us, Natalia. And if you all have questions for Natalia, you can put them in chat and we can just ask her here directly. Shout out to Lindsay, who talks about the increased humanity that we are seeing right now on all sides, and as a real sort of strength of what's happening right now. Just want to give a few shout outs into the chat. So we're watching and paying attention over there. Lou has now joined by chat and is answering questions there as well. So feel free to be asking us questions over there as we proceed forward. So next phase for us. Okay, want to go next phase?
Yeah, go ahead. So tell us about the provocation that we are kind of grappling with, and then what we did. So let's go next slide.
All right. Yep. Heather, jump back in. So in order to do this kind of work, so I've been sort of teaching online for the last decade. And so doing sort of online teaching and provocations and all kinds of stuff is really fun for me. We found out that we were going to do this national presentation with like 2 days to go before we had to do it. In this big national conference called A New Way Forward, which I think had several thousand people there. So I just sort of gave a provocation to the community, and jump a slide forward, around, what could school be instead? Based off of the learning that's happening right now during this pandemic, what could school be? And so Heather, jump one more ahead, and I just want to show you how we did it. We ran a live Google Excel sheet to gather data in breakout groups with about 10 people per breakout group. We then fed that all into a lotus blossom image that sort of pulls together all the ideas that emerged. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pose some questions with the 10 minutes we have left, pose a few questions and show you like the one big takeaway from that conversation. Also, as we pose the questions, you can be answering them for yourself in chat, and we'll be watching over there and giving some feedback. Good?
Yeah. So as Justin said, we broke out. So we had this big old, couple hundred people in our session maybe. And then we broke out into smaller groups. Just so you know, this Lotus Blossom activity, we're going to give you the link to it with directions so that you could replicate this in your own classroom, your own online environment if you'd like to. But as Justin said, we started out all together in a big group. We broke out into small groups around the question of pretty much what do we need to make sure that we're sort of bringing forward into the next version of learning in the next school year. So when we broke out into all these breakout groups, the original Lotus design is to have 8 breakout groups, but we didn't have that. We only had 6, but it's still pretty flexible.
So jump forward one more, Heather. Sorry. Thank you, Heather, for helping accommodate us.
Great. Thanks for running the slides. So first of all, over on the left-hand side of the slide, there's a link to the Lotus Blossom activity. It's got directions. It's got blank versions of this. Heather or Matt, are they going to be able to access the hyperlinks in the deck? Can we share the deck with them?
We can share the deck. I also just put into the live chat on YouTube the link to the Lotus Blossom, so I'll put some more links in there as well.
Great, smart. Okay, so good. So when we broke up into these little breakout groups in our room, my breakout group was the first one, the top left yellow one, which is about learner autonomy. So what are we learning about learner autonomy, and what are the things that we need to keep doing or do more of to bring learner autonomy forward? So Heather, if you'll go 2 slides ahead to the Lotus Blossom tool. So what we did was we put our groups into a shared Google Doc, and we just brainstormed together for 10 minutes about what are all the high student autonomy ideas that we can bring forward into Learning Next. So we had great discussion there around student choices, and really similar to actually we shared the choice board work from JCPS with everyone, talked about project-based learning, talked about engaging activities, talked about student passion projects, high agency or high learner autonomy choices that do lots to motivate students and that can be done in a remote sort of setting, but would also benefit from some face-to-face facilitation. So we had everybody dump their ideas into this spreadsheet. We put resources, good people to follow on Twitter, all of that. And then Heather, if you could go one more slide forward for us, we decided that our very best idea that we wanted to bring forward was a commitment to project-based learning. So we talked a little bit about the importance of having authentic, real-world problem solving with students, making substantive decisions about that learning experience. And so PBL, commitment to PBL, was something that we wanted to bring forward and contribute to learning experiences moving forward. So that was my little section of the Lotus Blossom. When we came back together, we shared that out more collectively.
Let's jump forward to a blue question. So on this blue question, we sort of asked about, what must change about technology use? And we don't have to rehash this because everything about the JCPS Digital Learning Channel is about this question. And so if you're watching JCPS Digital Learning at any moment other than now, you're learning what must change about technology use. But one more forward, Heather, what we really wanted to push on coming out of this was around minimum statewide equities with technology. That one thing we have learned really clearly through this pandemic is that we do not have statewide equity when it comes to how much access kids are getting to communication tools that are proving absolutely vital during this pandemic. But those communication tools have always been vital. Access to the internet is a right these days. Access to information is a right these days. And so we as an education system coming out of this need to push really hard on sort of minimum equitable expectations for technology use, both at school and at home. So that was our big takeaway around the technology one. And again, interested as we discuss these, what your thoughts are over in chat. And Lou and Susan are over there in chat, and I'm trying to keep up as much as I can. So you can help answer these questions for us too.
So, Heather, if we can go to the next one, and the next part of the Lotus was really a discussion about assessment. Lou led this little breakout group about how might assessment need to change in a more student-centered environment. And so if you could just show us the next slide, there was lots of good discussion there about the role of assessment and what assessment might look like in a more student-centered environment. Really good ideas about how kids can help co-create what their assessments are, how it's important for us to be assessing the soft skills like the JCPS backpack skills, less dependence, of course, on state testing or eliminating state testing. The idea that kids should be presenting, and there's tons of valuable learning that happens through that whole process because of the meaningful and actionable feedback that comes back from that. So next generation assessment, their best idea that came out of that, and one that sort of ties it all together, is the idea that kids can help co-create and co-construct what their assessment looks like. And we really believe that JCPS is on to really good work with the JCPS backpack as you all continue to refine that practice moving forward. So I'm looking at the time thinking,
Natalia's still with us.
Yeah, let's have Natalia question.
We've got a couple minutes left. So Natalia, you got to take part in this big national conversation and see a bunch of educators come up with these ideas. What resonated with you as a learner during this process as like one thing that you definitely want educators to take away from this process?
Well, the thing that I really liked that everyone was talking about was equity, and they were really thinking about how kids don't have all the same access. I remember very vividly before the quarantine happened that a kid I knew, we were given an assignment that had to be done at home, and it was an online assignment, but he didn't have access to anything internet-wise, and he had no transportation for it, and he was given a 0 because he wasn't able to do the work. And now that we're in a situation like this that forces teachers to realize not everyone can do everything, and they have to make other access points for them to be able to do their work, it's something that we prioritized, and I want that to happen. I want people to have access to the information and knowledge that I have access to, and maybe even more, because maybe they need a laptop or something like that, but not everybody has that, and that's really discouraging when you're doing your work and you can't do it like everyone else can, and your solutions aren't as simple. So
yeah, powerful, and thank you. It speaks to the really high level conversation we got to have with these educators across the country, and I hope that and just watching the comments from the JCPS digital learning channel, I really think everyone's heads are much more focused on equity now that the pandemic has really laid bare so much of the inequity in our systems.
All right. So we're going to work on turning it back over here to the, is there cancel, no capture. All right, guys, we're going to work on turning it back over to the live event here. Give me just a moment. I've got some technical difficulties I'm going to fight through real quick. There we go. Get that back up there. Awesome. So that episode was about putting the genie back in the bottle with the UK Next Gen team. And as you could see, that was available there with the Power of Pause on our YouTube channel. And that's available at jcps.me/digital learning. So let's visit that real quick. jcps.me/digital learning. And if you hop onto that website, you will see that there are tons of resources available to you, and they are sectioned out into different playlists. And you can also search the channel. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, please be sure to do that. Take an opportunity to get those updates and get the notifications when we either go live or update new content. Tons and tons of wonderful resources here and more still to come. We met just this morning and we'll continue our strategy to upload these broken up videos to this support channel. So please, please, please be sure to check that out. Another great resource is Kentucky Go Digital. So if you will take a peek over at that channel as well. So our digital learning channel focuses more so on the JCPS folks, and we sometimes bring in guests, but Kentucky Go Digital gets shared around the state, and so they really work to build that channel to break down silos and be able to share across districts. So we're really appreciative of that, and that was launched some years back now by from 4 teachers by teachers, but our own Elaine Abernathy and Heather Worrell were a big part of that in its inception. So again, if you haven't subscribed to the JCPS Digital Learning channel, please be sure to do that. Also, if you want to see, let's see, we've got the Summer League announcements coming up here shortly. And then to conclude the live session for today, we'll have preschool development with Donna Early and Barbara there will be joining us for that. So all of the slide decks, if we've received them, have been linked, or there's links to videos. And you can access this at the NTI support page in the digital learning schedule. And this will conclude our digital learning channel live shows for this, we'll call it season, during NTI, and so please be sure to check back and see those videos there. Robert, are you with us? I think we've got Robert joining us now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly fine.
All right. That's good. How you doing on this holiday weekend Friday?
I'm doing well. We just end up with a 30% chance of rain. Just came into just turned into a torrential downpour where I am. But
oh no!
I think it's got to stop.
Oh my gosh! Who figures, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Raymond, how are you, sir? Thanks for joining us.
Doing well. It's nice outside, so I can't complain.
Absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, this next session's got a little special place in my heart. I was reading through that and waiting to see what that's going to look like this summer. So if you guys are ready, I'll turn it over to you. Have you presented with us before?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So when we give you the reins, just if you've got a slide deck, just make sure you turn on closed captioning. If not, I'll let you loose, buddy. Go right ahead.
All right. Thank you. Hi, guys. Well, welcome. Thank you guys for being here on this lovely Friday. I'm sure everybody is really excited to be on this channel instead of outside. We're going to talk about the Summer League. Long story short, as everybody knows, our existence has changed, and this has really been no more evident than us teaching. Now for our summer programming, we have to offer everything virtually. That is going to be our plan. So due to COVID-19, all programming is going to be held virtually, and Summer League is going to be what we're doing. And that's going to be broken off into 2 primary categories. One of those is going to be Enrich. And Enrich is a high interest, asynchronous digital week-long adventure. It's going to culminate in a project that could be worthy of an artifact, a backpack artifact, and it's going to be students 1 through 12. Empower is another portion of it, and it's going to be utilizing teacher advisors for a small caseload of students and remediation or acceleration of numeracy and literacy. And just a few minutes, Robert will talk about that. But the big thing is we wanted to offer opportunities for all students to get involved, to offer learning opportunities, and to really make sure that we're hitting our students, because the summer slide is going to be real. Enrich is going to be open to all students, grades 1 through 12. The idea was to utilize a lot of frameworks that were currently in existence already that we built with NTI, and to really enhance them. So we wanted to incorporate a type of game-based scenario where students will have leaderboards, potentially avatars. Now, please know that that is a moving target. We are now 1 month away from the launch of this. So we need to make sure that we're keeping that within focus. Here is a quick mock-up that we had, and you'll see involves creating a profile. It involves leaderboards, and we have a very talented team in IT right now that is working on this, and we know that they are going to be doing some outstanding work, and we're really excited to make Enrich open to all students and make it engaging, make it fun, and potentially it could even result in some nice backpack artifacts. And as I said, it's open to all students. So students are going to be able to participate in a number of different things. Some important considerations for Enrich is that enrichment's the goal. A lot of the framework for this thinking, for what we're discussing for Enrich, came from our philosophies with the Backpack League. We wanted to make it an unschool-like adventure. We wanted teachers to think creatively. We want kids to go on adventures. And curiosity and inquiry are 2 words that we keep discussing when we're doing the design phase. We are really working with a number of shareholders within the district, including EL and ECE resource teachers. We want to make sure this is inclusive for all kids. We want kids to get involved. We want to make sure that we're making our adventures accessible. And we're going to offer opportunities for feedback when you start designing your proposal. So it's going to be really exciting. Before I go further, we've had a lot of great, I guess, excitement for wanting to participate in these programs. And right now we're working through that list. So I've gotten some emails from people who are asking, when am I going to hear feedback? If you've signed up by the end of the day, you will get the next steps. When you're considering your engagement piece, think about goal setting. We as teachers want to use Google Classroom as a delivery platform for adventures. And we really want to involve interdisciplinary activities whenever possible. And all activities should be about a week long. So we want to offer opportunities for kids, give them choice, voice, agency, and really allow for them to participate in that week long. So as I said, we're going to be providing those next steps here, and you'll be seeing something very similar in your email if you did sign up. And once you submit interest using the form and a couple slides, you're going to have to do a few things. We provided a template for you, but basically you want to know what you want to do, your name of your adventure, grade band, paragraph describing it, what kind of audience you're wanting to hit. The adventure must be divided up into 5 lessons. As I said, we wanted to, or more, we wanted to do a week-long adventure. It doesn't mean that it has to necessarily follow that format, but we also wanted to provide opportunities for potential backpack artifacts, including a rubric, so for some self-reflection. And during that time frame, we said that teachers can sign up for 3-week spans. Teachers can be holding office hours for either 2 or 3 days a week, depending upon how much time they want. 2 days a week for 3 hours, or 3 days a week for 2 hours. We want to give autonomy for that. So we're really excited about Enrich. We want it to be really competitive. We want to tap all that interest that students have with gaming and being competitive and leaderboards and kind of having that next step. So we're really excited about what's coming, even with a short time frame, and we think that it could be something that's really beneficial, not only for this year to help fight the summer slide, but we're really hoping that it's going to offer students amazing learning opportunities that can really culminate in backpack artifacts going into the next year.
All right, thanks, Ray. I'm here to talk about Empower. Just to set the context, you can see NWA did some research to discuss the COVID-19 slide. We are typically used to a summer slide, but we know coming in that we're going to face some significant drop in some of our student achievement just because of the lack of face-to-face instruction. So if you look at this graph put out by NWA, you can see the typical summer slide with the solid line there, and then with the dashed line, that is if they're calling it the COVID shutdown. If a student just maintained where they were at the stop in, I think they selected March 15th as the stopping point as school closure, and then there is the COVID-19 slide, the dotted line. So we could have decided to do nothing, given that we can't do face-to-face, but we know that is not what is best for kids. So we decided to cast a wide net to see what kids we can capture during the summer for about 4 weeks with some virtual learning. This example is a math example. The next slide is a reading example. As you can see, still damaging slide from the COVID-19 slide with the dotted line there. If you go from March 15th all the way to they selected September 1st because a lot of districts outside of Kentucky don't open till after Labor Day. But regardless, there is going to be a significant slide. So that's why we chose to make sure that we offered some kind of service for our students. And I'll talk a little bit about those services. For Empower, we are targeting two different groups here. You can see remediation are students that are below the 30th percentile reading or math, and acceleration 30th percentile to the 60th percentile. At this time, we are looking for middle school and high school to use an Admentum product, whether it's courseware or ExactPath. We're still deciding on the two, working with and collaborating with our middle school and high school folk on what would be best for our students. And then you can see for elementary, and this is a slight adjustment from yesterday. It was 3rd through 5th, but we were leaving out, we wanted to cast a bigger net and capture the 1st and 2nd graders who fell within that 30th to 60th percentile range. That way we can service those kids. So the change from yesterday to today was we're, instead of just doing 3rd through 5th, we are doing 1st through 5th with 1st and 2nd grade using our acceleration only. We'll use the ExactPath. It's an Admentum product, and 3rd through 5th remediation and acceleration groups will use ExactPath Admentum product. We already had in place some services for 1st and 2nd graders who fell within that remediation range, and they're going to use Lit Pro for literacy and for numeracy, and all the data for all groups was coming from the winter map because of the way school ended. But they will receive a hard copy workbook for reading and math. They're going to receive 5 books. All of this is going to be no touch by Jefferson County employees. So we are taking health and safety into consideration. And this is going to be mailed out by Scholastic. So we need to make sure between now and the last few days of schools, as we're contacting parents, that we're making sure we have accurate information from our families. Important considerations for Empower, looking at the structure. We want to continue the 3 keys that Dr. Polio talked about at the start of NTI, making sure we're thinking of students first, students' needs first, make sure we're over communicating with our families and being as flexible as possible. For the Admentum platform, 3rd through 5th remediation acceleration, again, 1st and 2nd grade acceleration only. We're looking at 10 students per teacher. Could be more depending on how many teachers we get to sign up, but our target is 10. Check in twice a week with each student. monitor progress throughout the week using the digital platform, whether it is exact path or whether it's courseware. 15 hours per week, flexible work day to meet the needs of the family. For Lit Pro, first and second grade remediation students, obviously when we know what the research says about working with smaller children, younger children, that it's better to work in smaller groups. They're going to have higher needs. Check in twice a day with each student. Teachers will need to check in daily, and there will be a process for that. We'll teach daily and conduct a workbook check daily. So make sure you keep, that's the difference between the Edmentum platform and the Lit Pro, is that you will be expected to teach a lesson daily and to check in or do a workbook check daily with these students. 15 hours per week, flexible work day to meet the needs of the family. And I do want to encourage, and I know Ray mentioned it earlier, with the Enrich, we want to encourage as many of our ECE teachers and ESL support staff to sign up and get in there, because we're going to need, and our students are going to need your assistance.
So if you are interested and you want to participate in Enrich, we're asking that proposals are going to be turned in before June 10th. Once that happens, we're going to work on the revision phase, taking like a modified design lab approach as we did with the Backpack League, but obviously asynchronously. We're going to offer 30 hours for facilitation, tutoring, curriculum development, all that stuff. If you're doing Empower, the expectation is to track students' progress on the computerized program and have the live check-in sessions twice a week. You're going to have an opportunity to have 15 hours per week during the duration of that 4-week program. And just the next slide, when it talks about the form, as I said, we've had a lot of interest, and that's been a great thing. Please be patient. I am getting emails about getting feedback. By the end of the day, if you've signed up, you will get those next steps. And then if you don't, feel free to reach out. And we're probably going to have a lot of questions. And kind of what Robert said is, I think the best thing about this project and working with a lot of really talented people is that we're all together. Like, we all realize the immense need for summer programming, especially this year. And we're coming together to try to offer multiple paths to give our students the support that they require. So if there's any questions, we'll be happy to take them. I'm sure there probably are.
I lost my window here, Raymond. Hang on just a second. I'll tell you, that was a very interesting program, and I know quite a few people that signed up for that. So we're interested to see how it forms and the benefit to the students, as you mentioned. It's going to be interesting. So I'm sure that those families and are so happy that we're ahead of things. I saw that slide that Robert was sharing about. The typical summer slide is one thing, but man, this COVID slide, they anticipate being. We needed to get in front of it. So thank you guys.
You're welcome. And one of the things that, we were dealing with a lot of unknown variables. If I could tell parents anything, it's that I know that there's probably in some cases burnout of digital distribution. There's probably some NTI burnout. I'm sure everyone kind of knows that, but we've done amazing work as a district, and our teachers are really coming up with some innovative things. And we can only control the variables that we know about. So as Robert was saying, Enrich, if you're doing Empower, it doesn't exempt you from doing the Enrich program too. Enrich is open to all students. Right now, the amazing Miss Crystal Hawkins is engaging families to see their interest level and what they want. We have a lot of community partners of all 502 is really rallying the community. And the idea is just to offer a one-stop shop, even if it's us providing visibility, for the amazing resources that our community and our teachers and our district is providing.
We did have a question, guys. Is this slide deck one that you'd be comfortable with us sharing a link to?
Yes.
We're asking for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's on the first. We shared it yesterday, but absolutely, we have no problem sharing it.
Okay. If it was on the slide deck from yesterday, we may just not have copied it over. I'll look for that and see if we can. I don't see the hyperlink. Raymond, if you don't mind sharing it with me, I can dump it in there.
Sure.
Yeah, so we had a question about that. What else did we have some questions about? Let's see here. Copy the slides. Who's in 5th grade? Amy, 1st grade Farmer Elementary. Just this Jordan Royce asked, just wanted to make sure that the sign up is just a Google form that you guys sent as of right now, correct?
Yeah, that's
for interest, but there will be and they'll get some more direction with it. But there is a process to formally apply through the summer link. That's correct, right?
Yeah, and what I was trying to say is we've had a lot of interest, and I'm going through those emails now. So if you've signed that interest form and say I want to do Empower or both or Enrich, we're going to send you kind of what those next steps are and what you can be looking for.
Perfect. Okay. So those of you joining us live right now, that initial form was just kind of giving them a gauge for interest, and then they'll communicate for the official application, we'll say, process to actually get involved for this summer. So be on the lookout. I think, Raymond, I heard you mention you were trying to stay on top of that. Of course, I'm sure you're getting slammed, but you're trying to get
Well, that's a
feedback
good
today.
problem to have.
Oh, yeah.
It is. And we're wanting to make sure that all information is the same. We want to make sure that our messaging is the same to everybody. So we were extra precautious in terms of the delivery of that. So that's probably one reason why it was till this afternoon. The anticipation was this morning, but we really wanted to make sure that our messaging was all the same.
Okay. We had Jill Napier ask, she wanted to know, when you say week-long curriculum, you mean a full day for 5 days?
No. So right now, when you're talking about those 5-day lessons as we're talking about between 1 to 2 hours per day. Now, granted that depends upon the speed at which students are going through them, but we don't want this to be like school. We're really trying to make it an adventure. So no, like we're not anticipating if you submit a proposal that you're offering 9 to 5 instruction for the students, because obviously they're not going to engage them. And not only that, it doesn't offer them choice. Like we really want them to get in and to have complete choice of what they're doing, to just find something that really interests them and move on from that.
Okay. Someone else asked, can you be part of Enrich but not write the program, just lead a group?
Currently, I don't believe there's plans for that. We have a lot of interest, so the goal would be to obviously lead something that you design. If there would be a need for that, I'm sure we would explore that and would be communicating that. But the idea is that teachers would provide that asynchronous lesson, and we're really trying for the enriched portion to take a lot of additional things off the teacher, because we know that we have to offer asynchronous platforms so that the community has opportunities to engage that work whenever they have a chance. But we really are looking at how can we make it engaging so that they can do a self-contained, but then also offer those progress monitoring checkpoints. So yes.
Okay. Let's see. We had another question.
How can I share that link with you? I don't see a chat from me.
Yeah, Raymond, with us, you may just have to email me if you don't mind, kyle.chandler,
Got
and
that.
I'll dump it in the form for everybody. That was a good question. So, guys, if you were asking that about how you could get access to the slide deck, after Raymond emails it to me, I can put it in the digital learning channel deal for you there. So we had another person ask, yesterday there was some talk about, Terry Griffin, yesterday there was some talk about pay being on tutor or curriculum scales, and they want to know if we could clarify. I didn't see yesterday, so I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Yes, I don't know the exact things off the top of my head, so feel free to shoot me an email. But I do know that there is a, I think it's the 2 different rates. At the top of my head, I can't tell you what they are. They're not necessarily like your hourly rate. There is a rate that was set. So I don't want to speak and not get those rates right. So I can provide that information, and I'll update this slide once I get clarification on that.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. We had someone else ask, any specific format to, this was Kevin Rojo, any specific format to develop the proposal for June 10?
In terms of like submitting the proposal?
Yeah, I'm guessing, like, will it be a form? Do you guys want...
we supplied a template, but basically we made a checklist of what we're looking for. We're trying to be very flexible. So we asked for just a few requirements of like, hey, what do you want to do? What grades do you want to teach? Basically can take considerations of EL and ECE students, and kind of what is your long-term project or potential backpack artifact that you're wanting them to submit, and really work backwards to have a kind of a modified zoom in, zoom out template that was provided by Teaching and Learning. But by no means are we trying to stifle innovation. We want to use that framework. But if you submitted a Word document that still did A, B, and C and met those requirements, we would look at it. In addition to the email that's getting sent out, I'm going to be sharing a Google folder with everyone that signed up for that Google form for the enriched portion, and they'll be able to dump their proposal into their folder whenever they finish.
Okay, great. Someone, Sir Jordan Royce, asked us, for Enrich, lessons aren't live, but content pushed out to students? Question mark.
No. So basically think of it this way. We're asking teachers to design a week-long lesson, a week-long adventure, and then students can burn through it in one day if they really wanted to sit down and tear through it. So no, like, there's not going to be any kind of live lessons. It's all going to be asynchronous. There will be some office hours that we're wanting teachers to do to offer some flexibility with that. But at the end of the day, all the lessons are going to be asynchronous.
Okay, and we're in. I'm getting a few different questions now. So one more time, if you'll help clarify, no one should have received the template yet. Is that correct?
No, not
okay.
yet.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm just gonna be crazy here and say we'll say sometime next week. Look for the email with the template
No,
if you
today.
signed up. Oh,
It'll
today.
be today.
Okay. All right. So Raymond
It'll be
says today. Look for an email response from him with information on the template and next steps, I guess.
Yeah, I know that the Enrich is we're just basically solidifying some last minute details before we start that out. And Empower, I believe, is almost done for all of their communication. So the goal is by the end of day that anyone who signed up will receive that. And then from there on out, like for example, if someone signs up on Tuesday, then the next morning I'll update the email rosters and send out the new links.
Okay, great. And I see again. I'm pretty sure, Raymond, this is one of those you mentioned getting some clarification on, but someone just asked, can you speak about the compensation a bit more? 30 hours at what rate? And so you're going to look into that and you'll update the slide deck. It's still kind of forming, I think.
Yeah, Robert, do you have any specifics on that? Do you know by chance?
It's like you get the tutoring rate, which is $15 an hour, but for any training session, you get your hourly rate. So for Empower, there's going to be a training for the digital platform. Teachers will receive an hourly rate for that training, but for the actual 4 weeks of Empower from July 6th through July 31st, it would be the $15 an hour rate that they would receive, because they would they will not deliver any direct instruction as far as teaching a lesson. It would all be progress monitoring and making sure students and tracking students' progress through the digital platform.
Okay. I've got from Kevin Rojo again ask us, will the group of students from the first 3 weeks be the same from the second week? Talking about the Enrich program.
Now this is the part that I kind of had to wrap my brain around. You necessarily won't have a group of students. So there's not, for example, like in the Backpack League, we assign potentially, X amount of students, 30 students, to an adventure. Students will have autonomy for how they work through this. So we might have one, like if you're doing, rocket design 101. I'm not saying that that's an adventure, but let's say it is. Then we might have a lot of people sign up for that. And that's why we want those asynchronous lessons, so that we're really we don't know what those numbers can be. So that's why we're really trying to make that clear so that students can work through it at their own pace.
Okay. We'll see. We have a question from Amy Kopp here. Wanted to know, can teachers have more than one group for Empower?
I know for Enrich and Empower, we talked about realizing like the workload. So like I know for Enrich, we talked about, teachers can submit as many proposals as they want. Obviously, we would question if a teacher could do 6 different adventures. We don't want them to bite off more than they can chew. But yes, I'm not sure about the Empower. Robert, do you know about that?
At this time, I can't answer that. We haven't really crossed that bridge as far as having more than one group. We hope that they only have one group and that we have enough teachers to match the amount of students. But that is definitely something I'll bring to our workflow team next week when we have our meeting. That is a very good question that I'm gonna make sure I bring forth.
And I don't think we've had really any discussion, but I wouldn't foresee any issue if you wanted to do Empower and Enrich.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think some of the folks that I knew that applied, they threw their hat in for both as well. So I think that'll be a popular offering for the summer. So. All right, guys. Well, I'm thinking that we've made our way through the chat questions. If you guys don't mind, I'll throw the line out to the audience one more time. We've got, looks like 43 viewing right now. If anybody has any additional questions or requests for clarification, you've got a couple minutes, if you don't mind, to toss them in there, and we'll see if we can get Raymond and Robert on it for us.
And
Also,
should anyone think of a question later on, as we've talked about how flexible and fluid this is right now, we did set up an email, summerleague@jefferson.ky.schools. So you can email myself, that's on the Google form, or you can do summerleague@Jefferson. So if you think of a question, because we're not going to be able to answer every question because this is a work in progress, feel free to ask it and we'll make sure we get it to the people who can answer it quickly.
Awesome. Okay, so you said, and I'll try to type that in the chat for us real quick. So what was that email, the Summer League email?
summerleague@jefferson.ky.schools.us. The Summer League and then the rest of the goodness.
Right. Summer League, Jefferson.us for questions. And Raymond, I got your email with the slide deck. So Ms. Henderson, I see your question there, and I will get that uploaded for us this afternoon. So it'll be a link on their slot for today. So thank you for your questions. And Raymond, Robert, thank you guys for, again, not only for offering the opportunity for our students, but also for being here with us today and helping us close out the digital learning channel for this year. So I appreciate good having you.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you having us, and please, I implore you to be patient with us with this process. We have more time than we did with NTI, but it's still a moving target with government and state government requirements. So please be patient with us. It's going to be a busy June. Send your questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer them as quickly and efficiently as possible.
I can almost imagine, guys, this is as close of a sense of normalcy as I've had to being at Camp Edwards, seeing both of you guys on the same screen. It's good seeing you virtually, at least.
All right. Good seeing you. Thanks again.
Have a good holiday weekend, guys. Thank you. All right. So I think we've got some more guests joining us to close out the afternoon for preschool development. Donna, Barbara, how are you guys this afternoon?
Doing great. You.
Awesome. Doing well. Well, have you guys presented with us before?
Once before on just this past Tuesday afternoon.
Perfect. Okay. Well, if you guys have a slide deck, you're free to show that. And if were you comfortable with the closed captioning feature on that?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, hey, without further ado, I'll turn it right over. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Oh, come on and share.
I can relate. I've been fighting mine all morning as well, so I understand.
It did this. It took a second the other day, too.
Yeah.
It just didn't want to. Oh, come here. Oh, it's just sharing that instead of what I want to do. Here we go.
Now we see you.
Come on, baby. Yay. Yay, is it up? Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
Yep, just don't forget that closed captioning for us, and I'll let you guys loose.
That's great. Lock C.
Oh, you can get to it there in that slide deck if you go back to present and then hover over the bottom left-hand corner. There will be a little gray bar that pops
there it
up.
is.
There we go, captions. Yep.
Awesome.
There you go.
Great, thank you. Well, and hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this late on a Friday afternoon of a holiday weekend. Before we get too far along, we'd love for you to let us know in the chat stream what school or department you're from, or just say hello. If you have any questions or comments, you can use the chat. We've left some time at the end of our presentation to answer any questions. My name is Barbara Schweikert, and I'm one of the presenters today. I have a bachelor's degree in communication and my master's in education for education and counseling psych.
Chef.
I'm a certified K-12 school counselor with most of my experience at a private high school here in Louisville. I began in January with JCPS as a mental health practitioner in the early childhood department. My home location is Dawson-Orman, but I also serve at McFerrin, Norton Commons, Unseld, and Westport Early Childhood Centers. I'm still learning a lot about working with this young student population, but have come to realize how much my skill set and counseling experience cross over just a lot of human barriers, regardless of age or development level. My co-presenter today is Donna Early. And Donna, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Barbara. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Early. I am an early childhood mental health practitioner, and I'm based at the Duval Education Center. However, I also serve the early childhood programs located at Hazelwood, Alex R. Kennedy, Maupin, and the center at Riverport. Here's a little background information about me. I received my master's from and completed my doctoral coursework at the University of Louisville in their counseling psychology department. I have been a licensed professional clinical counselor for the state of Kentucky since 2002. As a licensed counselor, I've worked in a variety of therapeutic settings with clientele of all ages. I was also the director at Spring Meadows for several years, which is a residential treatment home for boys. It's currently located in Bullitt County. I'm really happy to be here with you all this afternoon. So let's get started, shall we? Barbara is going to start the presentation. Barbara?
All right. Today our presentation is on early childhood development with a focus and a perspective from mental health professionals. I'll begin today with some basic development domains for preschool students. It's important, as this information is covered, to acknowledge that individual students progress through their development on their very own timeline. These are highly individual processes. Students may fall behind in one area while they get ahead in others. Human development is on a continuum where all of the domains are interrelated. I'll discuss how the domains work and rely on each other a little bit more within each domain. So the 5 developmental domains I'll discuss today are adaptive, cognitive, motor, speech and language, and social emotional. And we'll dive right in. The adaptive self-help domain is one that makes it easy to demonstrate how interrelated developmental tasks are. These are the skills that are really day-to-day, independence-building life-type skills. Things like children dressing themselves, tying their shoes, potty training, washing their hands, and using utensils to eat. All of those developmental tasks require increasing ability with fine motor skills. Also in this domain is taking personal responsibility and following safety and classroom rules. For example, walking in a line, putting toys away, and remaining in the classroom. This requires cognitive and language ability. Students have to understand the rules as communicated to them and remember those rules in order to follow them. The next would be cognitive development. This is what a lot of people think about when they learn that 90% of brain development happens before age 5. It's this domain that many of our parents worry about. It can be where comparisons with other students take place, but let me emphasize again, Each individual student has their own developmental timeline. During these years, attention span increases. A typical 3-year-old might have an attention span of anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes for an activity that is new or interesting to them, while a 5-year-old might stretch that up to 15 or 20 minutes. Preschool students are notoriously off task, and that in and of itself does not indicate a problem. A shorter attention span just means that it's a skill that they're still developing. They might need a lot of redirection to keep them going on one thing. Their memory will become longer and more detailed. I've been with a student who appeared to be reading a book, but actually had it memorized word for word and could recall every word as he turned the pages. This was really impressive from a memory standpoint, but not the same as actual reading. Imagination during this time becomes more developed. Students might report more about remembering their dreams, or might even have night terrors, which is their brain integrating this new area of imaginative development while they sleep. They can now distinguish between a stuffed animal and a real animal, but would use their imagination to play with the stuffed version as if it were real. Problem solving comes more into play. Climbing obstacles to get something they want, even if it's something that's been denied, or negotiating ways to get a toy from a friend are examples of problem solving. Classification by sorting, matching, and identifying things based on shape, color, or type becomes more consistent. This even includes understanding and classifying the difference between the truth and a lie. Students through this period also constantly question and seek to understand more about the world around them. The question why over and over can be a frustrating one, but is an indicator of their development, curiosity, and wanting to learn. Another thing to keep in mind with students cognitively at this age is how their sense of time is not developed yet. If you ask them to wait for just a minute, they don't have a concrete idea of how long that is. When they share a story from their past, it could have happened yesterday or a month ago, it's very likely that they're going to confuse their timeline. For motor development, fine motor skills are the tasks we perform with small muscle coordination. Primarily, we think about with our hands and fingers. So things like using scissors, holding and using a crayon or a marker, buttoning and zipping clothes, and turning the pages in a book. Students at this age are discovering whether they're left or right-handed for different tasks. Maybe they throw a ball with their left hand, but use a crayon or a marker with their right hand. These skills take time and practice, and early childhood students are at many different levels of ability with their fine motor skills. It takes practice again and patience to improve. Now, gross motor skills develop earlier than fine motor and involve the larger muscles in their body and coordination. Walking and running, climbing, kicking, balance, and jumping. Having unstructured gross motor opportunities, whether it's on a playground, in a yard, or any somewhat open area, even indoors, where they aren't a danger to the environment, is important for a child's development. These physical skills are not only for strength and endurance, but are avenues to further develop focus, persistence, and resilience. There are also proven correlations between gross motor development and all the other areas of development, even reading. Speaking of reading, speech and language development. This domain is also strongly linked to cognitive development. The ability to communicate begins with nonverbal skills, so pointing at things or using sounds and facial expressions to make their needs clear. Development over this domain includes listening and following directions. As those listening skills develop, verbal instructions can include more steps. So, for example, games can be more complicated, but still followed. Students are learning to speak in complete but simple sentences. They're learning sentence structure from what they hear. So they're developing correct and consistent use of pronouns and verb tense. Their vocabulary is increasing exponentially. They will recognize rhyming words and use most speech sounds. One of the best ways for students to continue their growth with language is for adults to model appropriate speech when talking with them. Talk plainly, use full sentences, make eye contact. It's very common for children to mispronounce words or be difficult to understand when they speak because they're still developing these skills. With reading, they are drawing meaning from both pictures and text. So they're integrating the idea that the alphabet forms words, and words are used to communicate. They'll begin learning and using the alphabet over these years and writing their name. All the communication skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, interrelate with each other and with cognitive development to make sense of language. Students will become better able to follow stories and to tell their own. And next is social emotional development. This is where mental health practitioners like Donna and I are most involved. It's in this domain where we see not all, but a lot of behavior issues in the classroom. Working and playing with others is an incredible skill for students to learn. They're moving from solitary play to cooperative play. They're building their understanding of sharing and taking turns, and this is dependent on those communication skills we had in the last slide. Students will display increasing empathy. Empathy is one way we can help them use their words to solve problems rather than physical reactions like biting or kicking other people. Now, for empathy to develop, they need to be able to recognize and name emotions, both in other people and in themselves, and relate the two together. It's easier to see a picture of a sad face and name it as sad than to recognize sadness in yourself at this age. Vocabulary regarding emotions will also develop and should be encouraged. So learning and using words like frustrated, annoyed, angry, and furious helps them learn about different levels of emotion, which helps to learn with regulating bigger emotions. One great way we use to help students develop better self-regulation is mindfulness. Tuning into themselves when they're calm will, over time and with practice, help them tune into their emotions, tune in when their emotions are getting away from them. I'm going to bring up a point here about not just self-regulation with students, but co-regulation. Children take a lot of their cues from the adults around them. If our own emotions are heightened, it is that much more difficult to work with an emotional child. Never hesitate to take a minute to calm yourself. Explain to the student that that's what you're doing. At that point, you really are modeling good things for them to emulate. Self-confidence develops during the preschool years. They'll take pride in their work and want to share. They may seem to brag and try to one-up their peers. A normal part of development during this time is increasing autonomy and independence. They want to pick which game to play and who is which character, pick out their own clothes, or make decisions about food and meals. Allow them to do that within reason to make or contribute to the decisions that affect them. It's a way to build trust and to increase their self-confidence. And some of the ways that mental health practitioners help students would be crisis management. So when a student is unable to function in the moment, causing a ruckus in the classroom, maybe throwing things, we can assist with de-escalation and helping a student find their calm. We might conduct in-class observations. These are never used to judge a teacher or staff member in the classroom, but to help identify triggers to behavior. Those things might be in the environment, with peers, or with their students, just their emotional development. We conduct individual and group sessions with students. This involves a lot of play therapy, building relationships with the students, and goal setting. Group sessions that meet would be small groups that meet together just for more of a short shared activity. We can also provide education to parents, providing outside resources when needed, and building that relationship to affect positive change for their student. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over now to Donna.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm going to go from developmental into some more behavioral issues that we might see in a classroom. When When Barbara and I establish a therapeutic relationship with one of our preschool students, ideally, we will also have established relationships with the child's parents and or guardian, and the teachers and the administrators that work directly with that child. This is a team undertaking. The relationships are important. I've had teachers ask me, what can I do in the classroom to help the child you're working with? I've created some case studies following of children that would have been referred to either myself or to Barbara. First, I'll talk a little bit about the presenting issues or problems, and then I'm going to offer a few universal suggestions of how a teacher might implement classroom strategies which would complement the work that we, the MHPs, are doing. You see on the screen, our first case is Janie. Janie is 4 years old. Within the past year, both of Janie's parents were killed in an automobile accident. Janie now lives with her maternal grandmother. In class, Janie has difficulty concentrating on tasks, and she is very easily startled. Sometimes she can be clingy and whiny. She appears to be withdrawn, and at times she is irritable with her classmates. However, there are other times when she seems fine. Some classroom strategies for a child like Janie would be to establish a feeling of safety and acceptance within the classroom. Greet her warmly every day, make eye contact, and let her know that she's valued and that you care. Provide a consistent, predictable routine throughout each day as much as possible. Regular schedules help to reestablish and maintain a sense of normalcy and security in a child's life. If the schedule is going to change, and schedules do change, explain beforehand what will be different and why. Consistency shows the child that you are in control of the situation. Allow Janie to make choices whenever possible. This will give her a sense of control and will help her to build self-confidence. Finally, there are going to be triggers to the behaviors. Don't hesitate to interrupt activities or to avoid circumstances that you find out are upsetting to this child. Watch for increased symptoms during or following certain situations and try to prevent those situations from being repeated. The next slide is Mark. Isn't he cute? Mark is 3 years old. He seems to be angry most of the time. He's quick to blame the other students when mistakes are made, and he acts in negative, vindictive, and hostile ways. He argues with his teachers, and he's defiant and or refuses to comply with requests. He doesn't have many friends, sadly, in class because his behaviors alienate him from his peers. So it's very difficult for him to learn or to develop positive relationships. Number one, with a student like Mark, do not engage in a power struggle with him. State your position clearly and concisely and avoid verbal exchanges. Choose your battles wisely. Give Mark 2 choices when decisions are needed. State them briefly and clearly. Make sure you've established a clear classroom schedule with rules. Be clear about what is non-negotiable. Post the daily schedule so Mark knows what's going to happen and what's going to happen after that. Make sure you praise him when he does something positive, because he will do something positive. Provide consistency, structure, and clear consequences for his behavior. And teach him social skills. That would include anger management, conflict resolution strategies, and how to be assertive in a proper manner. Make sure you discuss these strategies with Mark that would maybe perhaps help calm himself down. Those are like a breathing strategy is perfect to calm yourself down when you're angry or when you feel anger escalating. Make sure you do this always when the student is calm and not when his anger has escalated. Next, please. And finally, we have Allie, and she's 5 years old. Allie always seems to be sad. She participates in classroom activities reluctantly, but she never seems to enjoy them. She's often irritable with her classmates and teachers, and she does have outbursts of anger. She's sensitive to criticism and she cries very easily. She often has somatic complaints. She has stomach aches or headaches, and she has difficulty concentrating. She has a hard time completing tasks. Oftentimes she's quiet and she's disengaged. For this student, help her use realistic and positive statements about her performance and her outlook for the future. Perhaps break her tasks into smaller parts. Help Allie recognize and acknowledge her positive contributions and performances. Developmentally, Allie is at an age where she may see issues in black and white terms. She may see her actions as all good or all bad. Keep a record of her accomplishments so that you can show them to her. And finally, encourage her to engage in social interaction. Have her join small groups. Next slide, please. As you've just seen, we have preschool children may present with a variety of problems that indicate the need for mental health intervention. Because we're talking about presenting issues at this point in the training, I feel it's important to remind everyone of some other presenting issues. Those are the signs of child abuse and neglect. Remember, home is not always a safe place for children. In the most recent report from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, sadly, Kentucky, for the second year in a row, leads the nation in cases of child abuse and neglect. Did you know that teachers and other educators account for 20% of the reports filed nationwide alleging potential child abuse? When I worked in residential treatment, our census was always lowest when children were out of school for the summer. Once the school started, within a couple of weeks, we began getting referrals from all over the state. That was because schools were back in session and you, teachers and administrators, were back on the front lines. Here's one more statistic for you. During the first week of school closure in March, reports to CPS declined 30% in Kentucky. That doesn't mean the abuse stopped. It means that the abuse is not being reported. Keep in mind, these lists are not all inclusive. It's also important to note that the issues in these lists are not necessarily signs of abuse and can occur for other reasons. I'm not going to read the slides to you. Instead, I'm going to give you a moment to look at them. In this slide, the signs of physical abuse and sexual abuse. In the next slide, please, the signs of emotional abuse and signs of neglect. If you need more information, you're going to find it on the JCPS website or at your schools. Next slide, please. This has been a stressful time. We can all agree on that, right? For everyone, and will continue to be so well into the future. Eventually, though, we're going to return to the classroom. When we return to the classroom, we need to be aware that many of our students will be exhibiting symptoms of trauma as a result of loss of family members, because of economic hardships, and just anxiety about their own health and well-being or the health and well-being of their families. On May 6th this month, Mike Marcy with the Kentucky Department of Education wrote an article entitled KDAE Will Prioritize Students' Academic and Mental Health Needs When Schools Reopen. In this article, Marcy quotes Damian Sweeney, who is the KDE's program coordinator for comprehensive school counseling. Mr. Sweeney says, our content classes can't just be about content. These classes have to start with being psychologically supportive. They should infuse social and emotional learning. We know that these kids aren't going to come ready to learn. These kids are going to come wanting to feel safe and wanting a sense of community. I've mentioned relationships several times during this presentation. Remember, we as educators may be the only people that these students can learn what a healthy, supportive relationship feels like from. Building relational trust involves simple teaching practices such as smiling, sharing parts of your life with students, getting to know your students as individuals, and using yourself as a role model of a reliable and regulated adult. Next, please. Again, relationships are important. Positive relationships are important for all of our students, but especially for our students that have been affected by some kind of trauma. For those students, a positive connection or relationship with others is the first step toward healing. However, remember, with all of our students, a positive, healthy relationship is often the therapy. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Questions?
Were there any questions out there?
Let's see here. We had a lot of support coming in for you. Let's see. I'm taking a peek at that for us now. And we had some moderators in the chat live with us as well. I'm not seeing any questions at this time, ladies.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us on this Friday before a holiday and our last episode live. So what a way to end out the show, having you ladies with us to present. So we appreciate you doing that.
Thank you very much.
And we will we'll chop this up and we'll upload it. So just your 30-minute portion, we'll get that uploaded to the digital learning channel here, and I'd say probably about a week or so. And it'll be available to share. If you've got folks that are interested, and we can all do the same. So.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Absolutely.
Thank
you guys too. Everybody stay safe. Thanks.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this last afternoon for the JCPS Digital Learning Channel. Again, if you've not done so, subscribe. Take a look, and there will be more offerings to come. Don't forget, we're going to leverage that power of pause. All of these will be chopped up and placed on the channel for viewing at a later date. There are tons available to you now already. Subscribe, share, connect, and everybody have a great holiday weekend. And we look forward to talking to you soon. Have a good one.